gently stretch this out, okay? Grab the edge of it, kind of pull on it. Now it's going to be on a bunch of oil, so it's going to want to slide around, but like any big bubbles and stuff like that, you know, if they stay unpopped, great. If they pop, it happens, but try not to pop them, okay? So what's causing this to shrink back?
Gluten.
All the gluten, right? There's a lot of gluten in here. And then also the oil, right? Because it's got nothing to stick to, all right? So you're going to gently kind of just keep pulling this and pulling this, pulling this. In your perfect world, it'll be similar in thickness, but if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, okay? If it's shrinking a lot, what you can do is dock the dough, okay? And that will help break up the strands of gluten that keep wanting to shrink. And then kind of pull it a little bit further, a little bit further. Okay, you ultimately want to stretch this dough to cover the entire base of this pan, okay? So oftentimes that means grabbing it and having to pull it further than the actual pan, because when it shrinks back, right? It'll work itself out. Okay. If it doesn't cover the entire pan, it's okay, it's going to rise again. All right, so our focaccia we let proof twice, rise twice in the bins. You can, if you want, just let it rise once, then shape it, because it's gonna rise another time in the pan as well, okay? But our toppings weren't gonna be ready. All right, so then once you guys get this relatively even, relatively big enough to cover the pan, then what you're gonna do again is you're gonna go in and you're gonna dock it, okay? The entire surface area, and you can break all the way through the dough so I can see the sheet tray, okay? Actual like holes in your dough, okay? They're gonna shrink back on each other, but what I'm doing is I'm actually like completely breaking the gluten strands. Now you'll see like, oh, okay, now it's gonna stay a little bit better, okay? But don't put holes in it until you kind of get it close to where it needs to be. Okay, got that so far? All right, and then from here, you're gonna put your toppings on it, okay? Again, like I was saying, you don't wanna put hot things on top. So we can start with like the olives and the cheese. If you want to do one flavor focaccia, fine. If you wanna do half and half, fine. If you wanna do quadrants, you know, you could do onion, olive, just tomato. You could leave some plain, whatever. This is so much focaccia. Let's just do 2 pans each. Yeah, because we're also gonna make loaves and rings, okay? All right, so I'm gonna start weighing it for you. So then once you get to this point, now focaccia is not pizza, right? So like, and also, well, pizza shouldn't be this way either, but don't pile tons and tons of toppings on it, right? Focaccia is bread with a little bit of this and that on it, right? If you weigh this down with tons of toppings, it won't rise again, all right? And especially if the toppings are wet, like the tomatoes, if you were to put a ton of tomatoes on this, it won't bake. It won't rise, and then when it bakes, it's just gonna be like mush, raw dough, because it's just way too much moisture, all right? So you won't cover these too liberally. As you're covering them, I'll stop any of you guys who seem like you're going overboard. And then from there, you can drizzle some more olive oil on it, okay? And then we're gonna let it rise till it reaches about the top of this tray. And then we're gonna bake it. Before we bake it, you'll sprinkle it with some kosher salt, some coarse salt, okay? Sometimes people put the coarse salt on it right away. I prefer to do it right before it goes into the oven because again, like we've got active yeast here, so I don't want it to kind of burn through and affect my yeast that still has to work. It still has to rise and kill the yeast. Does that make sense to you guys? All right, so like to give you a sense of how much stuff to put on it, here, I'll do one over here, okay? So if you have whole olives, you know, less, but we could break these up if you want, just kind of tear them. Or if any of you guys, there are some chopped olives in there. Okay, you could do whole olives if you want, whatever you want, it's your bread. Also keep in mind too, like oftentimes when people are covering anything, don't try to just keep everything on the pan, right? Because, I mean, for olives or something like that, yeah, it's obvious if it's all over the place, but I'll show you what I mean in 1 second when I do like cheese on top, right? So look, if I am like, okay, I'm gonna do parm, but I don't wanna get any on my table, I'm gonna end up missing all of this. So if I got this piece of bread, I'd have like a barely a slice of olive and like no cheese, right? So just sprinkle from high up, okay? Try not to waste too much cheese, but make sure you get all the way to the edge of the bread, okay? And then keep in mind too, like, what size would you cut this bread? I mean, if you're gonna cut it into giant pieces, then maybe this many olives is okay. But if you're planning on cutting it into small pieces, then you probably wanna do some more olives, or else whoever gets that piece is gonna get nothing, right? So this is a little bit light on olives, fine for the cheese. But if you were doing something bigger, you could probably, you know, do about this much. It would cover more surface area. You guys kind of get what I'm saying, right? Okay, cool. So let me just throw a few more olives on this thing. This is gonna be salty bread, seeing as that I chose the saltiest cheese we have. And put olives on it, which are quite salty. That's okay. This one can be kind of plain. Anyone ever have any other interesting focaccia toppings outside of what you guys see here?
Rosemary, maybe?
We have some. Okay, the rosemary.
It's in the fridge.
I'm gonna go see if they're still hot. Just wanna go see how the tomatoes and onions are. As long as they're room temperature, they're fine. And the same with the rosemary, right? Just make sure that, you know, if you put it on there. It is like a pizza, basically, you know? It's like thick, fluffy pizza, but nowhere near as much cheese and toppings. Some people put sauce on it too, you know, but you do like a really light layer of sauce, not a ton. I mean, sometimes you will go places and have focaccia that's like loaded with stuff, but it's just not really. Okay, so here, onions. Okay, and so it's gonna rise with all these toppings on it. Why do you think that is? They're so hot?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so you can just put these over here, it's fine. Oh, hang out. Why am I putting these on now?
Because they're cold.
Yes. No. Versus putting it on the bread before I put it in the oven. Why am I doing it before, right now?
So it doesn't go down when you get it out the food box?
Right, so when this is done rising, like if this is ready to go in the oven, I don't then want to put heavy tomatoes and whatever on it because it'll probably deflate it, right? Okay. And another reason why you want to do those really large like finger holes or whatever, docking it, any idea why?
So it won't shrink.
So it won't shrink, but any other idea that I didn't already tell you?
So I put the
Hold the top of it.
whole toppings there.
The toppings aren't really going to go anywhere, but the olive oil, yeah, right? Like when you have really good focaccia, those little holes are filled with olive oil. But sometimes people put even more olive oil on top of it, even when it comes out of the oven. So, right, if you guys want to do olive oil, you can do that now. All right, some more olive oil. I mean, this is like, it just gets loaded with olive oil. What's the bottom exterior of like good focaccia like? What?
Is it burnt?
Is it super soft? Is it golden? Is it crispy? Is it
Is it
dry?
It's
Is
dry.
it oily?
I think it's dry.
It's golden and dry.
It's golden and it's usually oily. Like it's almost like it should be like the way deep dish pizza is in a way, right? Like where the crust has like some good saturation of oil and it's really crispy.